Anti-Catholicism is the one remaining acceptable prejudice in America. It's a statement made by Philip Jenkins, a professor of history and religious studies at Pennsylvania State University. As Catholics, we may agree with Dr. Jenkins, as it seems ridicule, parodying, and anti-Catholic articles are commonplace. But this is not new. We heard in the second reading today how Paul was defending not only himself as a disciple of Jesus, but also his beliefs in God and Jesus' resurrection. Also, the gospel tells us how Jesus was being accused of being possessed by the devil. So attacks on our church, our religion, have happened throughout the ages. In order to overcome these attacks, we have to unite as one. As Jesus states in the gospel, that a house cannot stand when it is divided against itself. And we have to know something about our church history. Paul's second letter to the Corinthians was written about 57 AD. He was traveling when he heard of the troubles in Corinth. He was about to travel to Corinth when he had a change of heart and traveled to Macedonia, where he had planned previously to go. He had sent Timothy, and based on Timothy's reports, 1 Corinthians was written and delivered to the people of Corinth. That letter dealt more with the people's misunderstanding of the faith and questions as to what things were acceptable or not acceptable. It would be understandable for anyone coming to a new religion and learning the rules. But the questioning grew to where heresies began. This escalation of wrong-mindedness continued and again increased when rival missionaries began to discredit Paul. The first time Corinth was not understanding was the community grappling with its new identity. But now it was a question of Paul's integrity and commitment. Paul wrote to Corinthians to deal with these issues, and that a community once growing in Christ was now losing its way. It seems when a strong leader is not present, or this leader is seen as hypocritical, not only does that leader suffer, but the community as a whole suffers. Our community of Catholics is a worldwide organization, and we need to be strong, and we need to be faithful. A reason for this is that the Catholic Church is seen as the moral compass for the world. Since the church is made up of human beings, we need to understand that as humans, we are not perfect, we are not sinless. In the first reading, we again hear the story of Adam and Eve falling from grace because of their sin. They were living in perfection. They were perfection. All they had to do was not do the one thing that God asked them. Do not eat of that one tree. Everything was free, beautiful, fulfilling. However, there was one thing they were told not to do, but tempted, they had to do it. So goes humanity. It always seems the one thing we are forbidden is the one thing that tempts us the most. We are all subject to this, and we need not make excuses for this. The church is made up of humans. We're fallible. Everyone is. And we need to understand that although a person may have faults, they are a conduit for the Spirit. When we receive the sacrament from a man, it is the Spirit working through that man that is important, not the man. We don't have to like the wrapping to like the gift. The Spirit has worked through man by way of the church. In his book, How the Catholic Church Built Western Civilization by Thomas E. Woods, Jr., he tells of the church's influence and actions in everything from art to science to agriculture to learning. No other institution has had as much influence on our society as this church. During the Middle Ages, the university system was born largely because of the way the church showed interest in the preservation and cultivation of knowledge. It began with cathedral schools, and then informal gatherings of students and masters took shape. The papacy took an interest, and by the 16th century, 81 universities had been established. These universities taught law, philosophy, medicine, theology. Most specialized in a course of studies, such as the University of Bologna on law and Paris for theology. Students came from mostly modest backgrounds. They developed the master's degree so a person could teach within the university system, and the graduate degree allowed them to teach anywhere in the world. The Catholic Church did much to encourage and facilitate the art of reason and argument. It was seen as progressive and enlightening. The Church has fostered learning, spirituality, community, and love. Charity is a large part of the Church, beginning with Jesus himself, telling us to love one another as we love ourselves. As the community of Christians grew, so did the offerings to those who had none or little. In the 3rd century, when Alexandria fell to the plague, the pagans would move their sick to the street so they wouldn't catch the disease. Christians took the sick in and ministered to them to their own detriment. The Church began hospitals through various communities of monks and nuns. Monasteries gradually became the providers of organized health care not available elsewhere in Europe. St. Vincent de Paul is one of our most famous saints for his charitable actions, as is St. Francis, St. Clare, and our contemporary Mother Teresa. We have modern organizations run by Catholics, people throughout the world. And all these people are basically the same, imperfect, but doing what one can do to serve God. Paul did all he could to bring faith to the world. He was treated no better than any one of us would have been. The ones who attack us may be anti-Catholic, or maybe they're just not understanding what we are. We must know of our history and our beliefs in order to show others what we are. We must realize how much our church has worked to serve and foster loving, giving, learned communities in our world. Paul faced odds worse than we ever will. Jesus did too. Even his family doubted about his prophecy. Our church is our people, and built with our people, as imperfect as we are. But we'll live despite the people who don't believe. It's up to us to accept that spirit and to continue the work that Paul did.